All right, everybody. Today, episode number 4 of the Legends Find a Way podcast. We have the health coach, Evan Transue, in the house.
What's going on, guys? What's going on?
Let's go, baby. So, Evan, obviously, author of Overcoming Mental Health Challenges. New book just came out in the last few months, correct?
Yep.
Host of Overcoming Mental Health Challenges podcast, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and Minding Your Mind speaker. You got a whole bunch of things going on, my man. How you doing today?
Doing good, man. Yeah, thanks for having me. I always love, obviously, for those that don't know, me and Graham know each other well, but somehow we always find a way to make these conversations unique still. So this will be fun.
Heck yeah. And so what we're going to do today, peeps, just so you're aware, is we're going to dive into Evan's really unique story of overcoming anxiety and overcoming a ton of different autoimmune disorders, or healthily, or actually healthily, organically, and in a natural way. And beyond that, talk about some things that we can actually do right now to help combat this coronavirus and start to work to bolster our immune systems and grow through this process. So it's going to be a lot of interesting things that I'm sure you haven't really thought of, people, because Evan is, if there's one thing he's going to do, is going to drop some awesome knowledge, and he's going to give us practical application on how we can actually use it to our advantage to get through this time and through this process.
Cool.
So first things first, Evan, so talk to us. I mean, you obviously have with Minding Your Mind, and for those of you who don't know, can you explain a little bit about what Minding Your Mind is?
Yeah, Minding Your Mind's a company that I'm associated with. So we are primarily a group of young adult speakers who go into schools, and we just share our individual stories, and they vary a ton, but it's all centered around mental health. So you're all independent contractors, so I have a deal with them. I do speaking outside of that as well, but it's really cool because no one gets you into schools easier, and I'm very passionate about that, especially while I'm still a young adult. I could be the best speaker in the world, and I'm going to connect still better to kids right now at 24 years old than I am at probably 54 years old. That's just a fact. There's actually studies showing that. So I'm just trying to do that as much as I can right now. So very grateful for those guys.
Hell yeah. And so as far as working with Minding Your Mind and helping impact kids in that way, what put you in position to feel like that was something you wanted to pursue?
Yeah, so it's interesting. When I got out of high school and we'll touch on that a little more, but I was at kind of my worst with the mental health stuff. And I had some really powerful experiences that kind of turned things around for me, or at the very least, put it on the right track. And assuming your kind of audience here is going to be into this type of stuff, which is cool because I have no idea how else to describe it. It was something that I didn't really choose. I felt that speaking chose me. Something told me that that's what I'm supposed to go do. And it was hilarious because I was terrified of public speaking. I know everyone's a little scared of it, but I really genuinely believe it was worse than even the average person. So it was kind of funny having this thing in my head telling me, all right, I'm the most scared person in the world of everything, especially public speaking, and that's what I'm going to go do. It's just weird having that kind of intuitive feeling, like I know that's what I need to do, but wow, there's so much work to do that along the way. So that was years before I ever really got into actual paid speaking.
Interesting. And as far as your personal journey with mental health is concerned, can you enlighten us a little bit on what that journey looked like? Because I know it was long, dark, and arduous.
Right. So obviously I'll give a summary, but should we just start that? I'll start it from the beginning.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So yeah, for me as early as 5 years old, possibly a little earlier, I was already having full-blown panic attacks. And for anyone in the mental health space or knows anything about mental health, you might realize that's really not common. It's a little more common in today's world, but remember, I'm 24, so this is actually 19 years ago. And at the time, I read the stats, it was like 1 in 10,000 males or something would actually be dealing with chronic panic attacks. And thankfully, they weren't a daily thing at that time, but these things started presenting. I was just always getting worried about a lot of different things. I would ask my parents, again, even at that young age, what happens after we die? What's the point of all of this? I had the intellectual ability to ask those questions, but I did not have anywhere near enough the emotional maturity to accept the answers that they tried to give me. And, God bless them, they tried to give me the best answers that they could. But I was really aware that the answers that the adults in my life were giving me to these serious questions that I had were not ones that they were really sure of themselves. Like they were kind of giving me the best answer they had. And I'm looking around and realizing no one has any idea what's going on here. And that just added to my anxiety and things like that. So as time went on, you know, I'd get a panic attack here and there, maybe on average a couple times a month. And then I'd have huge breaks where nothing really happened, but I was always a generally anxious guy. And then there was an experience at the very end of middle school that kind of started the beginning of the end, if you will, for my mental health journey. And what happened is I had one of the worst panic attacks I'd ever experienced in my friend's basement. So it was just a bunch of dudes hanging out. We're having a good time. We just got back out. We were hanging in the neighborhood all day and night. It was one of those groups of friends, you know, we just would hang out from 12 o'clock in the afternoon until 9, 10 o'clock at night, whenever mom and dad made you go home. And it was a good day. There was nothing wrong. I hadn't had a panic attack in a while, I wouldn't say. And I was in the basement and we'd only been down there for about 5 to 10 minutes. And I just felt like I couldn't breathe. And this is, I mean, classic panic attack symptoms for those that don't know. But again, since it had been a little while, it was really overwhelming. And I had never had it in a setting with friends before. So at first you're kind of like, okay, wait a second, am I actually feeling this? Am I actually feeling this? And then, you know, 10, 20 seconds goes by and I'm like, okay. And now you've just escalated to full freak out mode. So I didn't tell these guys what was going on. I just jumped up from the couch and ran upstairs to my friend's parents. And I'm just screaming, you know, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. So my friend's mom immediately took me to the hospital. My friend whose house it was, he drove with us, but you know, the other friends were about to get picked up. It was kind of a weird situation. So they stayed with the stepdad. And I got to the hospital and I was super embarrassed. And the reason I was embarrassed is because as we were driving over, I could feel myself calming down. And I started to remember, oh, wait a second, that was a panic attack. I'm not dying. I can breathe. I'm going to be fine. But I kind of had to keep playing it off like this is what I was going through, because these people that I was with, my friend and my friend's mom, they had obviously never seen anything like that before. And I just didn't think that they were going to accept the fact or be okay with the fact that, okay, 5 minutes ago, this dude is literally telling me he's going to die. And now he's basically totally cool, a little shooken up, but totally cool. And that started a huge streak of just daily panic attacks. It was one of the worst times of my life. That probably went on for about 3.5, 4 months. And I do mean daily, like it didn't miss a day. There was not one day in that period that I was not dealing with one or more panic attacks. It greatly affected my school. I was, you know, basically not going to school at least 1 day to 2 days a week. And I was exhausted when I was there. I would just sleep during class. And it wasn't because I was trying to be rude or I was just a jackass that didn't care. I was just up so late that by the time I had to get to school and be up for that, I was exhausted. So I wanted to go, but I couldn't go 5 days a week. I just could not get that energy out. And I started withdrawing from friends at the time because I was just terrified of having a panic attack or being in an anxious state while I was with them. So I would use these excuses and tell them why I couldn't be there. And eventually it just got to a point where I probably didn't hang out with my friends for, 3 months during that time. And, I'm barely really getting through school, not even going to it some days. So life is just kind of not really doing well. And that's when depression came in for me. Now, I did not recognize it as depression at all. Depression is something that can really creep up on people. Anxiety is obvious, right? This is how I always describe it in a school. If you're in a calm state right now and 10 minutes later you're in a panic attack, you might not know what the hell that just was, but you know that you have changed. Depression can be so subtle that the little changes that I felt every single day, I didn't realize I had changed as a person until like 3 months went by, 4 months went by maybe. And I'm like, wow, I'm starting to think a lot differently. So that's when these times of hopelessness came in. I started to believe that there was absolutely no point to life and none of this meant anything. I was lucky in the sense that I never battled serious suicidal ideations. And I know some people out there would consider any suicidal ideation serious. I'm not downplaying that at all. But, I never acted on those things. It was just something lingering in my head that I knew I could get out of this if I ever wanted to. So in this really kind of effed up, twisted way, the fact that I knew suicide was an option was ironically one of the ways I held on, because I knew I could get out of what I was feeling. I didn't want to die. I just wanted to not suffer. And I think that's true for most people that go through stuff like that.
100%.
So again, just finishing this up here in the summary, because you guys can read this, it's out there. There's a lot more detail in that. But it was towards the end of high school that things really started to get messed up. I started using drugs for the first time not long after those panic attacks happened. It was probably right at that 3.5, 4 month mark. I'd never tried a drug, not even alcohol, not even tobacco, any time in my life before that. But the depression, I realized looking back, I had this numbness. I didn't feel good, and I just wanted to feel something different. I wanted an escape from that reality. So that's when I started using those things. And listen, I don't sugarcoat things, you know that, Graham. But for those out there, listen, do I think some experimentation amongst young adults is normal? Probably. Like, I'd be an idiot to say not. But when we're using drugs inappropriately to hide our mental health issues, that's really where it's an issue. Right. And very quickly, I became the person in my friend group with, at the time, the biggest problem with drugs. I was the person that had to smoke weed every single day. I was the person that always had to take it one more step when we were drinking. I was the person that brought Xanax and anti-anxiety medications that I wasn't prescribed to into our friend group, and just using these things so I didn't have to feel, I didn't have to remember. And I abused drugs every single day for just about 2 years straight. I think maybe a little past that. I started selling weed myself just to support my drug habit. And guys, this is coming from a guy that I used to be a straight A student. I scored some of the top scores in our entire school district. And I don't say that to brag. I literally say it to point out I was a really normal guy with a bright future at one point. And now by the end of high school, I'm failing it and selling drugs and doing drugs every single day. And about 17 days in my senior year of high school, I involved myself in an altercation that I started, where I actually ended up getting kicked out, arrested, and put into a juvenile detention facility for a few days. And then I was on house arrest for a few weeks afterwards, and probation as well. So those were some of the worst times of my life. I was continuously abusing drugs, even on probation and house arrest. Again, I'm not saying this in a bragging way, but it was almost that I was too smart for my own good. Like, I knew that I could get around the certain tests. As long as they stayed scheduled, I knew what to do to abuse the drugs and fake those tests. It was really bad. And then, I mean, I kind of had my aha moment. I don't know if you've heard that before, I think. Do you want me to share that? Is that kind of important to this?
I think it's important, but before you get there, I don't want to just take 1 second to take a step back and think, like, sure. As far as you going through all of that, right? Because I know there was a point where you said are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry. I was checking the battery on this. I want to make sure I don't lose you.
Very good. So I know there was a point where you were, you're saying that, like, even suicide had come into your mind, and you knew that you could still get through it. So during that time, because it sounds like that was like middle school spanning through high school, correct?
Yeah, right at the end of middle school, and then the rest of that stuff was actually all high school.
So what's that, like 4 years?
Just about 3.5 of this really kind of severe stuff.
So what was it that you felt within you pushed you to not fall totally off the ledge, like completely? Like, what was the thing that helped you really just hold on?
I don't know, man. I think it comes down to the fact that none of us want to die. I've never met anyone that has survived a suicide attempt that said they wanted to die. They just don't want to feel what they're feeling anymore. And I think the proof of that is these people that survive, like, think about prisoners of war, right? And they survive terrible things 10 times worse than what I've been through. How are they able to survive? Are they that much tougher? I think some of them are. And then others, I think it's because they have hope, right? Like, they know that their buddies are coming for them. They know that the people are searching for them and they're trying to rescue them. When you're in that state and you just have this mental health stuff going on and you feel like there's no answer, you kind of get to this thought where you're like, is this going to be life forever? Right. So even though other human beings may have been in way worse pain physically or mentally than I was, it's that idea that this is never going to end. It doesn't have that light at the end of the tunnel that just made me say, okay, well, I know this is there. So I think the only thing that helped me keep on, honestly, is that natural instinct that we have not to want to die. And again, in this really twisted way, I used the fact that I knew I could get out of this at any time with suicide as a way to not commit suicide, if that makes sense. Like, it was just the way of holding on. Like, okay, if it ever gets too bad, I can get out of it. But, I'll push through today. Interesting.
And so that led, obviously, that spiral led all the way to an altercation that you had that got you kicked out of school.
Yeah.
And after that, you were still manipulating the system, correct?
Unfortunately, yeah.
So then what was it? What was the thing that finally got you to be like, all right, listen, time to let the boy die and let the man emerge, right?
Yeah, quite literally. So it was about almost exactly 3.5 months after I had gotten arrested. That was middle of September, and this was ironically of all days, New Year's Eve of that year. And I was able to convince my parents and probation officer at the time that I was doing well enough that I should be allowed out on New Year's Eve that year. Because I hadn't really gotten caught doing any of the things that I was doing. I mean, I was smoking weed on house arrest. I had drank on house arrest. But since I hit it well enough, everyone thought, okay, well, he's doing normal enough. He's working a job. Like, okay, he's fine. So thankfully, no one was that stupid. Yeah, you're allowed to go out that night, but you're still on probation, kid, right? So you're getting home by 12:15, and you're getting picked up by mom and dad to get home at 12:15. So I was like, okay, not a very fun New Year's Eve, right? But better than sitting at home all night by myself. So I said, all right, go out. And unfortunately, being the kind of addict, kind of arrogant jackass that I was, probably 10 minutes, not even, after getting dropped off, I was drinking and smoking weed with my friends. And my girlfriend was there that night at the time. So we drove to our other friend's house. And thankfully, the dude that drove, we had done a lot of stupid stuff, but he was sober. I mean, it was all good in that sense. But, you know, the rest of us, we're not like messed up. We're just having a good time. Like, we're just feeling good. And we get there and, you know, the night's actually pretty normal. Definitely drunk, definitely high, but I had years of hiding this stuff from my parents at this point, and I knew that they weren't going to think that I would do something like that. So I'm cool. But the girl I was with at the time really didn't have that much experience doing those types of things. And if I hadn't participated in that night, you know, she wouldn't have done that. But I said, screw it, like, whatever, like, yeah, drink, like, have fun. So we get picked up at 12 o'clock. Well, about 30 seconds into that car ride, they know that she's drunk. I mean, she is fully repeating sentences. It was pretty bad. And I'm like, oh my God, like, we're so screwed. Well, they turn around and they start yelling at her. They didn't even think that I could be so stupid as to also be drunk and high. So as long as I was quiet, I was cool. But they knew her well enough that they start kind of yelling at her. And they're basically asking, you know, like, how could you do this? You know how well Evan's doing right now. You couldn't go one night without being sober. And I mean, a half decent dude would have been like, hey guys, listen, I'm not saying what she did tonight is perfect. You know, I was 18, she's 17. Yes, she should not be drinking alcohol at any time. Not condoning that. But one, we got picked up because of me, so she probably would have gotten away with it, let's be honest. And two, if I hadn't been doing those things, she wouldn't have been doing those things. So I should have stood up for that, but I didn't do that. I actually went home and made the situation even worse. So once we were up in my room and we were by ourselves, you know, I started taking out my feelings on her. And I started freaking out at her. I was saying things to her I wouldn't repeat on this podcast. And, you know, I made this girl cry, and this is a girl I cared about. And in that drunken rage, I wasn't thinking about it. But in the morning when I woke up, she was gone. She had left a little earlier. And in that sober state, and if you ever drank too much alcohol, you kind of know what I'm talking about. You're like, oh my God, I'm never drinking again. You promise that's the time, right? I'm never drinking again, because you just feel like crap, you're hungover, but I'm sober. And with those thoughts of regret also came these thoughts of self-awareness that I had not had in a really long time. And I'm like, dude, like, you're the loser. Like, you're sitting at here, like, yelling at this girl. You're just projecting all these things that you don't want to deal with onto her. That had nothing to do with getting caught drinking that night. What it had to do with is the fact that I felt like an absolute, like I said, loser for getting kicked out of school, that I felt like a failure, that I could have went to any school or college that I probably wanted to go to if I had put my mind to it, even 50%. And now I'm sitting there without a high school diploma. I'm on probation. I'm the laughingstock of my whole, you know, kind of school district. Everyone knew what happened. That's what that was about. And it just hit me in one wave. I don't want to over dramatize this. It's not like some movie moment, but it was a significant moment in my life where I realized this isn't Evan Transue and his mental health issues anymore. This is Evan Transue, his mental health issues, and his girlfriend and his friends and his family. Like, I'm affecting every single person in my life because of the things I don't want to deal with. And if I can't change for myself, I need to be able to change for these people who have stood with me through these times. And that was kind of the moment, you know, I'm like, I'm done. Like, I'm done drinking on probation. I'm done smoking weed on probation. Like, I'm done doing these things. Like, this is crazy. Like, what's the plan? And I just, again, the floodgates opened, self-awareness came in, and wow, that was a really ugly picture to look at. But, you know, that was kind of it.
Damn. That's a moment of clarity, right? They always talk about that. People talk about that. I've had those moments as well. So it was literally just you woke up and just kind of had the realization that. Wait for the.
Sorry about that. Can you hear that?
Yeah. So you just had the moment. You just woke up and kind of had the realization that like you just had the self-awareness all of a sudden.
Yeah, dude. Well, it was hilarious, man, because I'm not hilarious, but ironic, I guess, because getting kicked out of the school wasn't the thing. Being in a juvenile detention facility wasn't the thing. Being on house arrest for my 18th birthday wasn't the thing. It was something about like just making a girl cry that did nothing wrong, like to me, right? That's just the lowest of the low. Like if you treat your girlfriend bad or things like that, when I hear these stories of like physical abuse and stuff, I'm like, dude, what kind of, like, you're just a, you know, piece of shit. I mean, that's all there is to it. And I felt so bad because of that. I'm just like, dude, that is so messed up. Especially because at, you know, at the time, like, I mean, this girl had options. Like, she was way out of my league. She didn't have to be staying with me through all this. And I mean, it was a serious thing to my reputation, man. Like, that was not a cool thing to really be hanging out with Evan Transue at my school. So, you know, I just appreciated that, I guess, in a sense, but I hadn't thought about that appreciation because I was taking that for granted. So yeah, it was something about that.
So you have this realization. So what's the first thing you do afterwards?
Well, again, so the first thing I'm just like, it wasn't just that sober, hungover, like, oh, I'm never drinking again. It was like, all right, like, I'm not drinking alcohol. And I did not get even close to buzzed or drunk for another like 2.5 years. I actually didn't end up drinking until a month after my 21st birthday. And as you know, I ended up eventually committing to sobriety anyway, but just for different reasons, I didn't want to be really doing that anymore. But yeah, I mean, I committed off alcohol. I was just like, I got to stop doing these drugs. I was at community college now. I got my GED. So, you know, probation wanted to see you in school and stuff like that. So I started taking school seriously. I was getting A's and B's there, which I got to be honest. Yeah, I mean, it was prereq classes. It wasn't that hard, but I was having to put some effort in and I was trying. I'm showing up. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Even though I don't feel good, I still have all this mental health stuff going on. So I was trying. I started just trying to be a little more open with the people in my life. And I started talking to the probation officers, and I was assigned like 2 different counselors. And instead of just ignoring them all the time, I started actually opening up about what I was going through. And I don't think I ever verbalized it fully. Like, that was never a comfortable thing for me to do. This is way out of my comfort zone. You know, I'm kind of used to it now. But at the time, I started talking about, hey, like, acknowledging this wasn't just a stupid fight or altercation that I got into. This was something that was induced because I'm going through a lot of stuff. And I think opening up and speaking up about what you're going through is important. That doesn't have to be a social media thing if you're out there dealing with this stuff. In fact, I encourage it probably not to be at first. Make it something with a counselor or a therapist or a doctor. You got to talk to those people who you know, like, and trust, or have the credentials to do this kind of stuff. And that was very profound for me. And then I ended up meeting a lot of positive people. That's when I met like Ben and those guys. So it all kind of happened in another 3-4 month span after New Year's Eve.
So after that New Year's Eve, you had these realizations. Within 3 to 4 months, you met Ben and Lauren, and the whole Vima thing took off.
Yeah, man, it was really cool.
That's
and
crazy.
that's why you've read The Alchemist, right, by Paulo Coelho?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, he talks about, you know, when you make a decision, the whole universe conspires to make it happen. And I didn't know how the hell I was going to do it, but I did make a decision. I'm like, dude, I want more from my life. Like, this isn't how I want my story to be. I want something different. And the only friend I ever made at the community college I was at, one single person that I ever had a real conversation with, was the guy that invited me out to like the sales company. And I had no idea what I was getting into when I went out there, but it was a vibe. It was energy. It was like the universe answering, God answering. I just knew I was in the right place at the right time. And some of those people are still my best friends to this day. The only reason that you and I are on this podcast is because I met those people. So I will never be convinced that that was just a dumb coincidence. I don't believe that at all.
Right. So you make this decision after just years and years of battling panic attacks, anxiety, then depression, then drugs to overcompensate, then probation. And it's interesting that during that time, it still didn't affect your psyche enough to like be like, hey, this is wrong. You know what I mean? And I know that because from my past too, like even when I was drug dealing and doing multiple drugs, up to 6 drugs a day, it never really felt wrong still. Like I still felt like I was justifying it, always justifying it somehow in my ego.
Yeah.
Okay, it's okay still, it's okay, even though underlying, you know, it's wrong. So you then go through this phase, you have these realizations, you ask the universe for this thing, it answers. So what happens then with this next push with the sales company? Because I know that that's a huge step in the direction of you building everything you've built. And for again, those who don't know, Evan just wrote a book recently called Overcoming Mental Health Challenges. And from everything that I've heard about it, I have yet to get myself a copy of it. And now with Amazon backed up, it might take a little longer. But from what I've heard from firsthand accounts, it's spectacular. So how does that next phase of your life play into this story?
Yeah, sure. So, that's several years, but I mean, basically the short and sweet of it is that without that sales company, I could not have, I don't know what I'd be doing right now. I think I'd still be on a better and positive path, but not with the same level that I've been able to do it at. And that's solely because that sales company and that group of individuals I started surrounding myself with was so big on personal development. And I mean, if you follow Graham, you probably have a general idea of what this is, but just for those that don't, I mean, personal development, in my opinion, is just any conscious action we take to better ourselves, mentally, physically, spiritually, excuse me. So I had done some stuff to better myself physically, right? Like I started going to the gym, I'm working out a little bit, whatever. But now I'm doing stuff to better my mind. I'm reading books, and now I got my own like little library going on, which is cool. I've read so many different books, listened to so many different books, and I'm watching these things change me as a person. They're helping change my habits, change my outlook on life. And I'm listening to like positive audios all the time. So some of this was just the traditional, what people would call like the motivational rah, rah, rah. Like, yes, it was just some motivational speaker or author yelling in my ear, or they have all caps on the text and they're just kind of screaming their message to you. But a lot of the other stuff was really practical, how to create new habits, how to create new disciplines in your life. And I was lucky because I was so naive that I just assumed anyone out there had better information than me. So I should just listen to whatever I get. And most people have that kind of ego to them. And I'm not saying I didn't have an ego to me. I just had it shattered recently at the time. So I just followed whatever was given to me. But most people are like, oh, does the self-help stuff actually help? Is it that big of a deal? I mean, it changed my life. So I started applying those things, and it just made me turn into someone that I genuinely believe that I can do just about anything that I set out for myself. No, I'm not going to say I'm 24 years old and I'm going to go hit the NFL when I've never picked up a football for a game in my life. No, I'm not suggesting that. But if I became passionate about football today, do I believe that in today's world with the access that we have with the internet and things like that, I could be a very highly paid, person in that space, whether it's a broadcast or whatever? I do believe that, given enough time. And I believe that for virtually anything. So it's basically, I believe I can do anything within reason. And that's what allowed me to set the stage for figuring out how to heal myself mentally and physically, becoming a speaker, becoming an author. That was foundational to doing all those things.
Right. So as far as personal development is concerned, in some of the books you read, what were the ones that had the most impact on you, or the one that had the most impact on you that really was the catalyst? You got it right there.
Yeah.
So let's go.
Yeah. So
show us the Health Coach Ev library.
Yeah. First one I read was, you can kind of see it's a little beat up. The pages are all yellow. That's a good book.
Good. Yeah.
So that was The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And this was the first one I read. And thank God it was like so simple. It's like 171 pages. Like it's a joke, like you just got to do it. And everyone else was reading them. So I was willing to participate in that. And like, dude, this is like 6 chapters. It talks about, okay, this is what it is. Number 1, the compound effect in action. 2, choices. 3, habits. 4, momentum. 5, influences. 6, acceleration. Conclusion. Like, it could not be any simpler. And I recommend that as a starting book still to this day. So it was just making me aware of how the daily actions that we take as individuals over a long term of period of time can lead very otherwise average people to success, whatever success means for you. That can mean happiness, that can mean wealth, that can mean relationships, whatever, successful relationships, happy relationships, and how just small actions in the opposite direction could lead to complete failure, for lack of a better word, in those areas. And I was just like, wow, like I'm a numbers guy. So a lot of it was like oriented around like weight, finances, things like that. I could see the numbers. I'm like, this makes sense. Like, I believe I can do that. And yeah, that's where it started off. That was one of the foundational ones. The 10X rule by Grant Cardone was great. Think and Grow Rich was great too, but not until years later, because I tried to read it at the time. I wasn't ready. Like, you need to be at just like a higher level, I guess, consciousness wise to do that. So those things were really important to me in the beginning though.
Right on. So how did you apply some of that stuff with the compound effect? It's a matter of you doing stuff with exercise and then also doing stuff to, better your mind, reading new things. How does that translate into the stuff that you've been doing recently with minding your mind, with writing your own book? Like, how does some of that stuff correlate? Have you seen that play out in your life since then?
Right. So I'm like, I look at myself as just like a really simple average dude that is just the master of doing the small steps every single day consistently with a disciplined routine, and then over time reaping the benefits from that. So again, I had no confidence at the time, for example. So how does this apply to speaking or whatever? I really couldn't get up in front of a room to speak, but I knew now from reading this, okay, well, dude, if you just do a little bit each day, eventually you are going to get better. So my thing became, I got kind of forced to do this the first time, I'm not going to lie, but just stepping up and doing the introduction for the sales company that we were in. So that was only a 3 to 4 minute speech, not even. And it was kind of, talking about something that I liked and enjoyed, but I would do that. And then it was like, okay, now I'm going to learn the next paragraph of the body, because we'd have a few speakers come up during these sales presentations. And now I'm doing that. Then eventually I'm doing the close. Then I can do a whole event by myself. If we didn't have enough people, I could do start to finish. And I would just keep taking off those little chunks. So there's actually an awesome quote in here. If it's in the beginning, I'll read it to you guys, but I don't want to spend the whole time looking at a book because I don't want to be awkward with it. But
you're good, dude. Find it now.
That's fine. I'll paraphrase it because this is great. It's right on chapter 1. This is one of my favorite things ever. So Darren Hardy said this. He said, the expression, slow and steady wins the race. Ever heard the story of the tortoise and the hare? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the tortoise. Give me enough time and I will beat virtually anybody, anytime, in any competition. Why? Not because I'm the best or the smartest or the fastest. I'll win because of the positive habits I've developed and because of the consistency I use in applying those habits. I'm the world's biggest believer in consistency. I'm living proof that it's the ultimate key to success, yet it's one of the biggest pitfalls for people struggling to achieve. That was the first thing that I ever read, basically ever, because I stopped reading after like 5th or 6th grade. I never took any of those summer reading books seriously,
Yeah.
And that was getting planted into the mind. I'm like, that's pretty interesting, right? And that just stuck with me through all those years. I guess I probably could have said that offhand, but I wanted to say it correctly. And it's just powerful, I'm like, this guy, and Darren Hardy's worth quite a bit of money. And I'm like, and he considers himself average. So that's what was cool to me. I needed that to be sold on that idea that this could happen. And yeah, man, just picking away at those small little things every little day. You don't become a professional speaker if you're terrified of speaking in one day. You just start practicing and you push yourself a little bit. And if you're in college, and that for me was just raising my hand when I didn't want to raise my hand. It's hopping on a phone call I didn't want to do. It was taking sales jobs that I was scared of, doing door-to-door, doing car sales, working out front at my parents' restaurant and having to take orders. I would just do small little things. And over time, remember, because it took about 3.5, 4 years to get paid to speak. And once I did that, they're like, oh, you're a great speaker. I'm like, well, I almost got like mad at that. I'm like, not naturally, like anyone could do that. This is something that was developed over time, and it's a skill just like anything else. So I've used that. I apply that in everything in my life. And no matter what thing I need to learn or what new venture I'm pursuing, I just know I can do it. If I just put in a little time each day, you just write out the plan and then you execute.
Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, dude. And the tortoise definitely sums it up, man. And that's just the analogy of all analogies for people in business, for people looking to achieve something greater. I think it's, and you're aware of this in the media. They always show you the rabbit. They always show you the hare. Always. It's always what's everywhere because it's so attractive. You always want to think that being the fastest, the best, the smartest, the quickest is going to get you where you want to be. But it's always the tortoise that's laughing themselves all the way to the bank. And in this case, the bank meaning the wealth, and wealth meaning happiness in your relationships, financially in your life, and all the areas that you choose. So I think that's super cool that that's been like one of that book and that thing was the first thing you read. And I can tell knowing you that that's played out in every single thing you've done. So moving forward from all that stuff to now you doing obviously the book, podcast, and to Minding Your Mind speaker and FDN and all that. How does the Health Coach Ev brand come to be?
Right. So I was originally these things got applied to healing myself because we were in kind of a natural health supplement company, and I started to get some results from those things. And as time went on, I just became sold. I'm summarizing this obviously, but I became sold on the idea that, okay, I can heal what I'm dealing with physically and mentally naturally. So these kinds of habits and that stuff is what actually allowed me to do that. I just realized I need to keep trying. I need to keep pursuing things. And I eventually, it's funny because you just moved out to California. I drove out to California at one point. I convinced my buddy to go with me. God bless him, because I really don't know if I could have pulled off the trip without it, just to find people that knew more about natural medicine. So I drove all the way out there from PA. We had his car with 90,000 miles on it. It hadn't been inspected. And we had about $1,200 total, and we figured it out. So we went out and did that. And as I became healthier and healthier, I was discovering my passion with that. It was no longer just a thing of speaking for mental health, although that is always going to be something close in my heart. It was just speaking about the truths that I discovered with healing, with holistic healing, things like that. And a great way to find your passion for people out there, because that's something I think a lot of people are concerned with. Some people wonder that their whole life. One of the best things that I ever read was the way to find your passion is to figure out what you would pay someone else to let you do. And initially, the things that come to your head, like especially me at 18, I'm like, oh, dude, like I'd pay to let me do this video game all day. And some people love video games. There's nothing wrong with that. That really might be your passion. But then I realized, okay, do I actually want to do that every day? No. I'm like, you know what, dude? If someone let me go into a school and share my story with other young adults and kids, I would pay someone else to let me do that. And so that's kind of how I found it. It's not a question you can really ask yourself and just answer instantly. You kind of have to think about that for a few days. So I found that passion, and dude, I don't know how else to describe it. It was just a fire that just has never went down, and it never burns out. In fact, it does the exact opposite. I feel like it just gets stronger over time. And I worried about that for a time. I thought, oh man, this isn't going to last. I'm not going to have this type of motivation and inspiration. And the truth is, it's the exact opposite. Like I said, it gets stronger over time, and I'm more dedicated to this work than ever before. And I love helping people in that sense. So I went out to California, like I said. I learned a lot about health. I got involved in a certification with this lady, or by a lady who was at a coffee shop. She was giving a presentation, and she had an awesome story. So shout out to Jen Malika, the Holistic Health Boss. So it's WHOLISTIC healthboss.com. Check her out, please. She's great. And, I got into that course because of that. I learned a ton about health. I'm an avid reader. I'm always just kind of studying this stuff. And, I use that to really get to where I'm at with my health today. But I still have some to go, probably. But I am night and day physically and mentally from where I was before. And, my passion is just sharing that with others. That's really what it comes down to.
And so what are all the different things that you have helped yourself to heal holistically?
Sure. So the main things for me, and I want to be very clear with this type of stuff for people out there, especially if they're hearing it for the first time. When we're talking about mental health issues, I divide it into two categories, and I talk about this in the book. I talk about it on my podcast all the time. I call them circumstantial mental health issues or non-circumstantial mental health issues. Circumstantial are those ones where, unfortunately, we've all heard them, or some of us have experienced them, those horrible stories where a severe trauma or series of traumatic events was, experienced by someone, and now they have mental health issues as a result. I'm sure I can help with that somewhat, but I don't pretend to speak on that because that's not really what I went through. Mine were kind of non-circumstantial. Like I didn't really have a reason to be experiencing panic attacks or eventually depression or these issues with substance abuse. It really didn't make sense that I felt so bad. And that's that area that I specialize in, because I believe that largely comes from biochemical imbalances due to this stuff in our modern world. So with that said, to answer your question, the things that I've done is just try to return as much as you possibly can in today's world, because it's damn near impossible to do it perfectly. but to return to what our ancestors did. We lived outside. We drank unpolluted water. We ate real organic food that was seasonal. We slept and woke with the light cycles of the day. And there's a lot of science behind this. I don't want to just sound like all, kind of out there for people that aren't familiar with this stuff. But I found out about the science later. I tried it first and then figured out why this worked. So yeah, man, just getting back to as natural lifestyle as possible. For me, that includes, eating organic. That includes doing daily intermittent fasting. And I don't really call it fasting. I just call it normal eating. But, I don't think we would have been eating at 12 a.m. as a human being. I just don't think we would have had access to food like that, even 300 years ago, let alone 1,000 years ago. Going to bed when it's dark, waking up with the sunrise, just following all those natural cycles. And I am really oversimplifying that just to not get too technical with it, but that stuff has changed my life. And that's what I talk about in the book.
And so what types of things have you noticed you have helped yourself to heal since you started getting back to the old way of living, or the original?
Sure. So the biggest things you mean?
Sure. Yeah. Just dive into a couple. I'm sure, because I know people are dealing with them. So.
Right. One of the biggest things that I've never changed since I started it 4.5, 5 years ago was eating organic. I did that for a month. I did a challenge with that. I basically ate no refined sugar, and I could eat whatever I wanted so long as it was organic and didn't have the refined sugar. I'm lucky, I'm pretty clear now, but I had horrible acne. You guys can check that out at Evan Transue on Instagram. Scroll down a little bit. It was posted recently. I mean, one of probably the worst cases you've ever seen, or at least up there with them. And that got about 70% better in the first month of doing that. So I felt mentally better just because of that. The self-esteem went up. But I was so sold on it after that. I was like, this is incredible. So that's something I've maintained over time. I personally eat what you would call a paleo-based diet. I've tried vegan, I've tried vegetarian. Paleo-based is what works best for me. I don't really respond well to grains. Maybe that's something I'll introduce later in life, but that's not something that works too well. I typically don't share that because I don't want people to get an idea. Focus on the organic, focus on local, focus on seasonal, focus on knowing your farmer, and then figure it out after that. I don't want to leave everyone with too open-ended of a thing, but I don't want to put diets into each other's minds, because I've seen people do a bunch of different diets that worked really well as long as those foundational principles are met. Then over time, I really got into light. And as you know, that's one of the things I'm most passionate about, or I just love talking about, because it's something that no one is really focusing on right now. And I believe that what we're doing with light is having a huge effect on our mental and physical health. I put light up there with food and water, and people are like, what the heck? How does that mix in? But when you understand the science, it does. So I wake up, as you know, with the sunrise or a little before, and then I won't allow myself to see artificial light until I've already seen normal light for the day. And the reason for that is because the light from the sun, the light outside, is setting your circadian rhythm all day long, especially in the morning. That's when it has the most profound effect. So I got stuff on YouTube on this. I talk about this on Instagram all the time. I don't think anyone wants to hear this for 40 minutes.
Actually, I think that we do want to dive slightly into this, especially with the whole COVID thing going on. People are inside naturally more anyway. So,
all right, well, I'm down. If you think that's what they want
to hear.
Dude,
for sure. Yeah. Sure. I mean, you've had a journey and a half. And I think that there's not a better time to talk about some practical application people can actually implement into their lives and start seeing some better results. And real quick, just for people to understand, because I know not everyone does know what a circadian rhythm is. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. All right. Well, if we're going to do this, then we'll drop it right down to basics. So circadian rhythm, you can literally, everyone knows what a rhythm is. It's kind of a cycle. Circadian, I like breaking down words because it helps people remember it. We know circa, that means approximately. DN actually comes from diem, which is Latin for day. So it's approximately a day. And it's really interesting that they knew that, because the circadian rhythm is actually not exactly a 24-hour cycle. It's 24 hours and 15 minutes in humans. Pretty much all living organisms have a circadian rhythm. And what that's referring to is just that cycle that we go through every single day. So you, as a human being, a normal guy, normal person watching this probably, best knows that as just our sleep-wake cycle. So you've probably noticed, hopefully, that you tend, if you don't have an alarm, to wake up around the same time every day, and you tend to fall asleep around the same time every day. Now, in our modern world, that's kind of gotten screwed up, but humor me here. We all know in general, you're probably falling asleep and waking up within the same hour range more days than not. So when that circadian rhythm is optimized, our biology is good, and that's called circadian biology. So we now know this is more than just a sleep-wake thing. This is our organs. This is our digestion. It's all these different things, hormones, really cool stuff. So when we are exposed to artificial light, the body's getting all these signals that screws up our circadian rhythm and thus our circadian biology. And when you screw up the circadian biology, it throws everything out of whack. Now, how does this work? Well, we have different receptors in our eyes, and we have receptors in our skin. And believe it or not, that's actually so this light that I'm seeing right now, my skin is taking in that light. My eye is taking in that light, and it's sending signals based on the type of light that it's getting to my body. And it releases different hormones based on what's happening with the light. I mean, it's fascinating stuff, but we never think about it like that. We don't realize that our body's literally almost absorbing the light, for lack of a better word. So there's two things that we're really screwing up with. One, we're not seeing any natural light during the day, right? Like what's crazy is, and not to get too deep into it, my window's closed right now just so there's no noise coming in for this podcast. Your window is actually filtering certain light and already making that kind of toxic to the human body in a way. It's definitely not worse than an artificial LED, but that's not normal light. The best light is the sun's light. That's full spectrum lighting in its truest form. So we want to be out there getting those signals. But then on the flip side, if we're not outside enough, what does that mean? It means we're inside too much, and we're getting those signals from the artificial lights, the LEDs, the computer screens, the phones, and they're telling our body a different signal, or to send off different signals every single part of the day, when those were never the signals we're supposed to get. So that's kind of the basics of it. You've heard me explain this a million times. Maybe you can guide where you'd want me to go next with that.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously with the circadian rhythm, that's important to understand, because if you understand it, then you get why it would be important for you to get the natural light at the certain times of day, and how important it is perhaps not to spend as much time under these artificial lights. Mm-hmm. So in the case that we're currently in with this whole COVID-19 lockdown, where we're all supposed to naturally be, well, we're supposed to be on lockdown and inside more, naturally being exposed to, guess what, more TV, more news, more boxes, more phones, computers, video games, etc. How does one combat this time and apply some simple steps to make sure they're still getting the right kinds of light to keep their, for example, immune system up and high through this process?
Sure. So obviously, in a perfect world, I always tell people what the most optimal thing is. Perfect world, you live outside every single day for the rest of your life. Okay. Who's going to do that, right? Probably no one. So then let's go to the next best thing. What are the best times to optimize sleep and optimize the circadian rhythm? Well, one, we know that the sunlight from the sunrise is some of the most important stuff. That helps cortisol get boosted up. It helps suppress melatonin, which is good in the morning. We want cortisol a little higher. We want melatonin lower. And it sends a signal to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is in the hypothalamic region of the brain. And that is acting as the body's internal clock. So that sends out the signal to everything else and says, hey, baby, let's go. We're ready to go. And you felt that probably, right? If you're in a pitch black room, sorry, I thought I had on Do Not Disturb. If you're in a pitch black room and you go outside, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, right? It can be a little too much if you do that quick transition, but you start to feel awake and alert and things like that. So you want to be catching sunrise or morning light every single day. Honestly, it might sound extreme if you're hearing this for the first time. You want to be doing that every single day for the rest of your life, like really without exception. If you miss it because of work, great. Figure out how you can start doing that in your daily life. Like that is so important. It's not even
California.
Yeah, right. So that's actually a really good point, because the northern latitudes, the higher up you go, I mean, your light cycle is totally screwed up in some of those places. So really good point. Next thing that's most important is getting outside during the day. So a great way to do this and make it most efficient, after you're in the morning light for, a week or two, your skin's going to start to get a little more adapted to being back in normal light. Then you could start going out in midday sun and trying to get up your vitamin D levels. Most people don't know this, but you cannot burn just any time during the day. That's not how it works. And you also cannot produce vitamin D just any random time during the day. In fact, depending on where you live, you can't even produce vitamin D no matter what time of day it is, certain times of the year. So we're recording this at the end of March. By April 1st, every single place in the earth is getting, at least for the most part, some vitamin D. Some of it's really small amounts, but every place is doing that. And if you live where Graham's at, either Southern California, Florida, Texas, anywhere pretty much like, I feel like it's like middle Colorado or a little lower than Colorado and below. And then of course, you know, it'd be like, I think the 30th latitude back up. Sorry about that. That's where you can get vitamin D year round. So then you could start going out in the middle of the day and you could start using the D-Minder app. It's completely free. I talk about this all the time. I have a video on YouTube on how to use this at Evan Transue. You can go check it out. Just type in D-Minder Evan Transue. And you can use that app to actually track how long you need to be out in the sun to get that level. What's up? Oh yeah, nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally user-friendly, right? Like it's pretty simple.
Oh, dude, it's really cool. I'll show everyone real quick just so they can see what it looks like. Perfect. It tells you exactly what's happening with the vitamin D throughout the day and when you can get it, what the UV is. And it's at 6 right now, so I should probably get out there soon.
Yeah. That's exactly where I'm going after we're done this. So depending on your skin type, you know, you'll put that in when you first get the app. If you're African American, like this time of year, you might need to be out a long time in America to get the proper amount of vitamin D. Whereas guys like Graham and I, we're a little slightly different skin types, but overall pretty similar. Him and I can be out for about 30 minutes today with just shorts and no shirt on, and we can get over the amount of vitamin D that we even need. So it's really cool. Great way to track that. And you want to do that because vitamin D, I'm always saying this tongue in cheek, there's probably no better marker out there in Western medicine for something being correlated with just great health in general. Like if your vitamin D is good, that's probably one of the best markers that you could have in terms of overall health. So you definitely want to get that down. And then the next step is blocking blue light at night. Now, this is a little tougher for people. This is the one where it's really kind of a new concept to them. But here's the thing. So just like that sunrise in the morning, you know, raises cortisol and lowers melatonin, we don't want that at night. In fact, we want the exact opposite. Well, it turns out that blue light, which is just a part of the light spectrum, you know, it's like 400 to 550 nanometers is the real range that affects it. So it's like kind of violet all the way to even parts of the green and definitely all blue. That light, when it's exposed to our eyes or even our skin, believe it or not, because of a receptor that we have in our skin and eyes, that is something that sends the signal to the body and says, wake up, wake up, wake up. Well, everyone says, oh, great, I don't have any blue lights. Well, blue light's not necessarily 100% blue. It's a spectrum type of thing. So if you use a phone, if you use a computer, if you use any type of LED, you are being exposed to a lot of blue light at night. And then you're probably realizing, oh, wait a second, that's all I use for light after dark. And that's the problem. I have genuinely been convinced that that is the number one thing that's affecting our health and killing us in general. Some people will have different things in their particular environment, but overall, if I could change one thing, I would change the light environment that people are in. So how do you block it? Well, you block it using something called blue light glasses. Again, perfect world type of thing. You would actually use red bulbs in your house. You would put filters on your computer and iPhone. I don't want to overwhelm everyone today. Again, I have guides on literally all of this, and I'm producing more right now. It's in the book. I mean, you can get it for free on YouTube. I'm not selling you guys anything. That's completely up to you how you get it, but it is out there. So you can use these glasses. Graham and I have a thing with a company called Blue Blocks, and they're great. They're out of Australia. We both know the guy that runs that, and they've had a phenomenal impact on my life. I know that they've helped you out as well. So the code to that, the discount code, is POG20. That guy gives us a 20% discount. And like Graham doesn't take any money from that. I don't take any money from that. We literally actually just got the best discount that we could to help people out there that want to get these things, because they're like $100. You know, they're not cheap, but they're going to last forever. They're fantastic. They're definitely a little weird the first time you use them. I mean, you're going to be wearing, do you have yours local? Or are you wearing them right now? I don't know.
I can actually get them. Yeah, I'll get them. Hold on.
Yeah. All right. I'll keep throwing it down while he's grabbing that. But yeah, so you wear these and you wear them at least 2 hours before bed, and it'll help you produce that melatonin because you're actually blocking the light that is causing your melatonin to be suppressed and your cortisol to be awakened. So I'm going to have to take my headphones out here, guys, and charge this a little bit. Okay, so if you think about that, because again, this is really the simplified version of it, but that's having a huge effect on our health overall. And depending on what age you are watching this, you probably realize, wow, I've been exposed to TVs, at night, LEDs at night, phones at night for the majority of my life. So that's probably had a pretty big impact on you, on your sleep thing. Looks like Graham may have gotten them, which would be cool.
Oh, they're right here. I got 2 pairs. Show everybody what's goody. Of course, they're both packed away.
Boy, yeah, you just moved out there.
Yeah. So here are my blue blockers.
Yeah, and you can tell, listen, I'm never promising someone they're the most stylish things. They're probably not what you want to wear on a first date, right? But they work very well. I like giving people instant gratification if I can. That's normally the promise of Western medicine and not functional medicine. But these things work the first night. They work more the more you use them. But the first night you wear something like this, 2 to 3 hours before bed, then you only take them off once your room is pitch black and you're ready for bed. So you're not about to stare at the phone again. You're not about to turn the light on. Pitch black, go to bed. It really has an awesome effect on your sleep in one night. I remember, Graham, you might have saw this, Andy, that guy that does the blue blocks, he actually had someone who had never worn them before use their app, like a sleep tracking app. And she got like 30 or 40% more deep sleep on the first night. And this is a lady going to bed way too late. She's going to bed at like 1:32 in the morning, and she still got that big of an increase in sleep. So that was fantastic.
And I want to go into just some of the things that I've experienced using these, because I also really do believe that everything I've been saying, there's a lot of validity to it. Most importantly, with Evan specifically in this health coaching and the natural and holistic approach to things. For all of you, you all know that that's something that I'm really into. I don't know anywhere near as much of the science as Evan, but I don't think it takes that much awareness to realize that when you get up and you look at the sunrise, the sunrise, and you go to bed and look at the sunset, that automatically is resetting you. Because when I get tired at 8:30, 9 p.m., that's like when the sun's down. That's the normal cycle, normal clock. My question to you, Evan, is when you started to pay more attention to the light, did you notice any differences and changes in your life immediately?
Oh, yeah. So for me, I started with the blue light glasses like several years back. I didn't know anything about the sunrise aspect of it yet. I just knew blue light was bad. I knew it was killing our eyes, because that's what causes eye strain. That's what's damaging our eyes as well. So I always forget to say this. I really appreciate that you kind of just indirectly reminded me. Yes, you've seen blue light glasses out there probably if you're watching this, and they're clear. Those are not sleep ones. At best, they're computer ones. At worst, they're complete knockoffs that don't do anything. So I'm loosely calling them blue light glasses. What Graham has is blue light sleep glasses. So yes, I wore those at first. I did not actually have ones that were good. I bought one off Amazon. I was on that end of that knockoff. I didn't realize that there was different types of ones. It said it was a sleep one. So I was probably only blocking about 70, 80%, and every little bit matters. So I'm using them, and I did notice a difference for sure. It definitely helped with sleep to some degree, but it wasn't like the deep dreams I get now and the instant sleep. I think it's called sleep latency. It's like the time that it takes you to fall asleep. I didn't really get that as significantly until I started using real ones. So that was really cool. And I started blocking other light in my environment, because I'd be wearing those and still running around in the LEDs in my kitchen or whatever. And as you guys know now, on the skin, that light touches any part of your skin, it can send that signal to wake you up. So I noticed a little bit at first, and then once I got the real ones down, I was like, whoa, this is really cool. So then I started studying light more. I'd read about it. This is a fantastic book called Light Medicine of the Future by Dr. Jacob Lieberman. And I found out about the sunset from studying guys like Dr. Jack Kruse, and he's phenomenal, by the way. He's a little rough around the edges with the way he communicates with people, but the guy's brilliant and has great information to share. And I started doing the sunrise thing. When I combined sunrise with the glasses, that was, no pun intended, night and day. That was a change. That was phenomenal. So it was really cool to experience that.
Yeah, and I just want to, as a testament to that, for me, one thing that I noticed, and I tested this quite a bit when I first got these, was I would play video games later at night after 8 or 9, and not only would I become more irritable very quickly afterwards, but I also would have a much, much harder time with the latency of actually falling asleep right away. When normally I'm in bed, and my girlfriend will be the first one to tell you, I'm usually out within a minute, right? So to see something that drastic where when I don't wear them, it takes me, more minutes to fall asleep. But more importantly, I'm irritable, I'm irritated. My mind isn't as eased and peaceful in the evening. And then to have that experience where I'm, out in 2 seconds, and I wake up feeling, and the key word here is fresh, right? Because we should be waking up feeling fresh and restored, not groggy and still tired, right?
Yeah.
And there's a list of other things that we could talk about that have some effect on us waking up feeling fresh. But I think it's important to note that from a mental perspective, from a psychological perspective, even just adding something like blue light blockers to your regime and really working to get the natural light as much as possible and keep the LEDs off as much as possible, only when you actually need them. Or, I know, Evan, you're a big fan of the salt lamps and getting more of the natural, not natural, but red lights in your house. I mean, that's been a profound effect on my life as well.
Yeah, because now I'm, doing this stuff and being in the space I'm in, I'm just hyper aware, right? Like I can notice any little change in my body, which like just last night, it was funny. I noticed my heart rate was like, about 10 to 15 beats per minute faster than it normally would be. I was sitting around like, 70, 75 before going to bed. I was like, what would cause that? And then, I did a 24-hour fast. I did exercise on that. I probably pushed the body a little more than it wanted to be pushed with the combination of stuff. I had some other things going on. So it was a little stress response from the body, right? So I noticed these things. And the reason I use the red light bulbs now is, one, again, I know the science of it. Okay. Basically what happens, guys, is there's something called melanopsin. So that was discovered in 1998. It's in your eye. It's in the intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells. When blue light or green light hits that part of your eye, which it's deep in the retina kind of, bam. All right, now you're told to wake up. Well, 2018, we discover that it's in our skin. So I know that's kind of hard to comprehend. It's like there's a receptor in my skin that light sends a signal through. Yeah, but that's what happens. So I'm like, all right, so I'm not only going to wear these glasses now, but I'm going to try to block all the blue light. So I have my room set up. I have the Himalayan salt lamp, which isn't perfect, but it's pretty good. But I also, I filter my phone and my computer. So I'm making a video soon on how to filter your phone. It's pretty simple. You just go to accessibility, then color filters, and you do, I think like you put the intensity all the way up. I don't know how to describe it off just verbally, but I'll make a video of that soon. But I also have stuff on my computer as well. So there's a great program called Iris, IRIS, just like, iris in your eye. And that will block a pretty good portion of blue light on the computer screen. So I still wear my glasses if I'm on the computer before bed, but I also have them on the computer so that my skin's not getting as much. So that's an important thing to do. And again, it really sounds kind of extreme and nutty almost. I just dare anyone to try it for 30 days. You just sleep so much better. So It's cool.
And we all know that when it comes to anxiety, when it comes to depression, even those things, getting real sleep, because what happens after anxiety, what happens after depression, we both know insomnia is along the way too. So getting an opportunity to kind of combat some of that stuff and align with everything that you represent, I think is also really important. But with all that said, I think that the obvious thing here is like, hey, people, start actually paying attention to this. Like, don't just throw by the wayside. If you're not feeling the best, start to become aware of the fact that, maybe 200 years ago, humans didn't have boxes that emitted blue light 24 hours a day in their face. Maybe not, right? And start to become a little more aware of that. But as we shift the conversation to the current crisis of our world, this COVID-19, and first of all, before we dive into it, just to get a little more of bio about FDN and what exactly you do with FDN, just so people are aware of what it is you do and some of the things you've been practicing. What are some of the things you're doing to combat this personally for yourself?
Right. So that's a good question. And I forgot that's where it was all tying into. So there's the practical sense, the advice about social distancing, the advice about washing your hands. These are very real and sensible things. If you have access to the masks and you're not like depriving the people who really need them, like the hospital workers, nurses, things like that, then yeah, you could use those as well. But try to prioritize the people in society that need them the most. That would be probably a good and moral thing to do. But outside of that, I mean, I hate to give such a cheesy answer because I don't want people to think it's just like me copping out with this, but the best thing that you could have done for coronavirus was a year ago. And that's getting your immune system over time as strong as possible. And most people's immune systems, they're shot. When you don't get good sleep, your immune system goes down so significantly, and most people are running around like that. So at the very least, you don't have to be perfect immune system. You just got to be the last one to get it, right? And I hate to say it like that, but I mean, that's really what it is. Like, if you could see that people are getting it in your county all the time, the truth is those people probably have, for whatever reason, a suboptimal immune system, and then you can act accordingly. So that was probably the best thing to do. But right now, the precautions that I'm taking are just being super, super careful when I'm at the grocery store and not to get too close to people. I'm going sleeves up because I just want like it very obvious where my skin's touching. I wipe down all the products when I get back home. I use something called colloidal silver as well. Now, there's not necessarily direct studies on this showing that it has antiviral properties. So that's my full disclaimer. I'm not saying to anyone to do this. It's my belief with what I've experienced from it and what I've heard from many, many others, that it has certain antiviral capabilities that we haven't really fully identified yet in the literature. So I take it as kind of a precautionary thing. Vitamin C is also great. We're starting to see that actually being used in the treatments in New York right now. It was also used in Shanghai, and they're having good success with that. Is that an alternative completely to just doing what the doctors want you to do? No, it's a serious disease that ends up putting people in ICU sometimes. So you want to do everything else too, but you can kind of take vitamin C as a precautionary. It's a powerful antiviral. It's really one of the only substances, if you will, that's ever been proven to have really serious antiviral capabilities. So that's an important thing to take. Get the powder form, get it from like a cherry extract. Pill, okay. If you have nothing else, fine. Liquid can be okay, but the powder is usually the best because it's a food extract. And you're actually getting more bang from your buck, because people look at the powder, they're like, oh, this costs more. Well, not really, because the pill that you're using that is made of ascorbic acid, it doesn't absorb as well. So you don't actually get, it's not as bioavailable. So yeah, you 200 milligrams on, or you might see 1,000 milligrams for a powder serving versus a pill serving and realize, oh, I can get, it's like half price of the powder. Well, you're probably only getting 30% of that pill form, whereas the food extract, you can get almost all of it. So those are some things I'm thinking about, not going too extreme with it. I tell people the same thing every single time. If I thought I had these symptoms, the first thing I would do is try to get intravenous vitamin C mixed with the other things that the doctors are recommending. This is not medical advice. I don't know that I would try some of the experimental medications unless I was in a really bad shape. And that's just my personal opinion, though. That's not advice.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing some of that. I think
Yeah.
especially everything with the vitamin C and doing some of the stuff that's already worked, I think is powerful. But most importantly, I think you already hit the nail on the head. We should have been doing this a fucking year ago, right? And that's where this whole conversation is going, my friends. When you're talking to someone like Health Coach Evan Transue, you're talking about somebody who has literally lived in the state of anxiety, who has lived in the state of depression, who has cured other autoimmune diseases too. We didn't even get into all that. But there were a couple of autoimmune diseases that you have overcome too by eating organic, by getting right, by moving your mind in the right direction through personal development, through growing yourself. All these things combined to put yourself in the best possible position to create what you want in your life, and most importantly, be the most healthy you can be, right?
Right, absolutely, yeah. And yeah, the best way I can ever describe that, people, in one paragraph summary. I made this video the other day. So you guys see this right here, a little gross, but it's a scab. I got it the other day, or it's scraped. I scraped myself the other day, and there was a cut, right? So now the cut's bleeding a little bit. You put some pressure on it, it stops. And now what's happening? Well, now it's scabbing. And in a few more days, it's going to be completely healed, and you won't be able to tell that I had a scrape, right? The body has an innate ability to heal. Now, when would this scrape and scab not heal? Well, if I kept doing the same damn thing that scraped it the first time, it's probably going to get a lot worse. If the scab's there and I keep picking it, probably going to go right back to where it was, right? So the metaphorical scraping or scabbing in the body is
the environmental toxins, whether it's foods, whether it's EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, whether it's the blue light, whether it's the lack of sleep, whether it's just stress from our daily go, go, go type of society that a lot of people don't really vibe with or like, that's the scraping. And we never get a break, so it can never scab and it can never heal. Functional healthcare is the removal of the scraping, allowing of the scabbing, and eventual healing. So we remove things that are really affecting the body, and then we use that body's innate ability to heal to reduce symptoms. And it's worked for me.
It certainly has, my friend. And I think that the analogy that analogy is the most simplistic way to get the point across. And so for all of you listening to this, I mean, if you're doing something that you know isn't serving you continuously over time, well, then you should probably also know that with that is going to come consequences, right? Which I think is something that we as humans don't really accept that often, which is interesting, because now I'm making the connection back to the beginning of this conversation where you were talking about, oh, I have this option to end my life if I choose, right? And it's like the fact that you accepted that that was an option gave you the hope I should say, put the faith in you that you could get through it. And I think it's really fascinating how I see people all the time, and I'm sure you do too. They consistently are doing things that they absolutely unequivocally know there is no way that they are good for them. But they have this like underlying, it's almost like they have this underlying unawareness that they don't think there's not going to be any consequences, and that they can't actually die or nothing bad can happen. And so all of a sudden they're in a place that's too far gone, right?
Right, and that's the famous line, right? If a cigarette gave you lung cancer on the first smoke, no one would smoke cigarettes, right? Humans, we do have this impulsivity. We do have this lack of ability to think long-term with things. That's a lot to do with like the prefrontal cortex and things like that. But it does matter. So you kind of have to override that. And the simplest way to override that is to make the brain not have to think as much. That's where habits come in, because you don't want to have to be constantly using your willpower to fight the urge not to eat like crap every day. You want to make it a habit to eat well every day.
Right. And that right there, that's a whole other conversation, in the sense that when you say it, it sounds good, but when you experience it, you're like, oh wow, this is what that is. I don't have to use any energy to do the thing that I'm already used to doing. Right.
Yeah. I'd be losing right now if I had to use energy. If I talked about my habits 5 years ago versus now, I would burn myself out. That's why it has to be little things over time. Yeah. And I think it is the funniest thing when people call me disciplined. I'm like, in certain ways, sure. Like I'm maybe a little more than average. I don't consider myself particularly disciplined. I consider myself very, very good at creating new habits and just making it super easy.
Right. And I think it's also important to note that, when you look at nature, every single thing in it is something that comes on gradually, right? All things grow gradually. Trees don't just grow up one night and just sprout out of the ground and are like 100 feet tall. Like it takes time. Same with these habits. But over time, all of a sudden, you get to see the majesty of this world. I mean, look at Earth. For the last how many billion years, it's been growing into what it is now. And now we have our species here doing what we're doing. It's been gradual. We didn't just show up overnight and then build this stuff. It may look like it, of course, but it's all just, like you said, momentum, which I think was like chapter 4 or 5 of that book or whatever. But I think in a summation of everything that we've talked about thus far, really your story, it really is the story of coming into the awareness that what I'm doing isn't wrong, that I can do more, I want to do more, and now I'm just going to build the habits to do more, and then let those habits carry me forward with momentum to a place where now I've become much more well-rounded in my sphere of life. And now you're in a place, as I'm seeing, Evan, where you're doing FDN stuff on one hand, you're doing Health Coach Ev as well, you're building your own brand via overcoming mental health challenges. As far as the podcast, as far as the book is concerned, you're minding your mind speaking. So it's interesting that little seed has now grown into all these different fruits, right?
Right. Yeah, you just got to have faith that over time that's going to happen, right? I love what they talk. Really good point that you used the seed. The one guy, Earl Shope, he was the mentor to Jim Rohn, and he talks about how dumb would the farmer be that, puts his seed in the ground and then digs it up every single day to see if it's growing. Like, that's just idiotic, right? Like, you have a faith that it's just going to grow. And you need that same faith with yourself that if I just do the things I'm supposed to be doing, over time, it just works out, man. It is really one of those things where you kind of just wake up, you're like, wow, that part of me is completely different. How did that happen? And it's cool. It's a really cool feeling.
Right, dude, the tortoise, man. That's the thing. And it's really funny because recently in some of the clients I'm working with, we were like messing around, and there's this really great quote that I love, which is that fast is smooth and smooth is slow. And I love that because I think that it really highlights the tortoise, and it really shows how the tortoise is like really effective. So it's kind of hilarious we're talking about this because that's sort of become the low-key mascot of like our little crew, because it's just so powerful when you come into the awareness that it's all about that gradual success, because then it consistently gives you a time to adjust, and you never feel like you're out of balance or out of whack, or you're revving it up and going down again. You're just smoothly moving all the way to the top of wherever you choose to go. So
Right.
I think that that's fantastic. But moving past all that stuff, because I mean, we've covered a million different things. As far as overcoming mental health challenges is concerned, the book and the podcast, what are the important things do you think people need to know as far as moving past the areas and stages of what they might be experiencing right now with the general anxiety? I'm sure that anyone that has that is probably heightened. We're supposed to be on lockdown in the house. Depression is something that can easily come around for extroverts at this time. What are some things that you think you can apply or you have insight on based off of your expertise in this area?
Right. Yeah. This is the time that you don't want to cop out, right? You actually, in fact, want to do some work and not overwork yourself, but start addressing those things. If you were someone that was dealing with anxiety and depression beforehand, this is when you start really attacking that stuff, and because you have some time, hopefully, and looking at those things. If the anxiety and depression is kind of triggered by this situation, I mean, that's a whole separate conversation, right? I don't know that I'm necessarily the best. I'm certainly not the only one to answer something like that. But I mean, I know the things I do is I just, over time, the mindset work has helped me keep things in perspective. So I try to be prepared and proactive, and the rest I just I give up and release. I stop trying to control everything. So I'm still working on that for sure. But, you know, I try to release as much of that as I can. I think a lot of the stuff with meditation, mindfulness, and breathing is really overlooked. And again, that's very similar because it's one of those things, where's the best time to start meditation, breathing, mindfulness? It's not today, it was a year ago, because that's a skill that needs to be developed. But I do think stuff like that can be very practical in times like this, because it helps get you into that mental state where you can calm down and put things in perspective. So those are like my quick tips. But really, I think the thing that you should be doing is just using this time to really go at what we're talking about on this podcast, where it's just like, all right, address the mental health stuff now while you have the time. Flip the coin, right? That's just one perspective, that this is a really scary time. And it is, I'm not denying that. I've been scared at times with this, but flip the coin and be like, all right, well, I also have the opportunity to put in work I've never put in. So we've given you book recommendations, podcasts, YouTube and stuff. You got plenty of time to go do that, hopefully, if you're watching this. So go check that stuff out, you know, and really just start the process.
Right. There's a million resources, and I think you hit the nail on the head as far as starting to go at some of that stuff that's been holding you back, right? I always talk about this as overcoming yourself. Right? We all have these issues, these inferiorities, insecurities, traumas, things we've been through. But if we don't actually take the time to combat them out of love that you have for yourself because you want to be better, or you know you have the potential to be better, well, then they're just going to boil and boil and boil. And as you suppress, it will obviously manifest its ugliness somewhere else in your life, right? Which is why we have so many issues in the 21st century, and why mental health is starting to become the big thing, right? Yeah. Obviously. So, and, you know, literally Exhibit A right in front of me. So as far as your book is concerned, I am really curious. What was the thing that actually got you to be like, you know what, F it. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write this book, and I'm going to do it because I want to offer my story as a precursor, a warning, an anecdote, and an antidote perhaps to people that have dealt with the same things?
Yeah, that's a great question. A few years back, I actually started writing it, and then I never finished. I didn't even get past like the introduction.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
I wanted to use that because I heard that I was like looking up, like, how can I get speaking engagements and how can I start speaking? And one of the best ways that they said to do that was to write a book. And like, that makes sense. You know, I don't have any formal credibility necessarily. My credibility is my story. So if that's fair to understand that people are going to need to hear that first before they invite me to speak somewhere. So I'll do this, I'll give out the book, whatever. And then, you know, I started speaking regularly a couple of years back. And once I started doing that, there was like this, it was kind of ironic because that actually re-inspired me, even though I hit the goal, to write the book and finish the book. And once I had that, I was like, all right, bam, I did it. And the reason I did that is because I went in, I've increased my speaking skills a lot over the last 2 years. As you can imagine, if you do anything a lot, you're going to increase the skills. When I first went in, I didn't really feel confident. I felt like I was going to bomb. And when you're focused in those nervous feelings, it's very hard to get your message across because you're not focused there. You're focused on like not messing up, and you're too much in your head. When I realized that even when I wasn't speaking well, how much impact my story was having, I realized, and I don't mean that just because of Evan Transue, I mean that because no one really talks about the deep, dark stuff that they deal with mental health. So I wrote the book because I wanted to share the story for anyone out there. And I shared stuff that I don't typically share in presentations and speeches. I shared stuff in that book that I shared for the first time ever. And it's just any little thing that I could possibly think of someone relating to and being like, wow, am I crazy, or wow, do I have something like really wrong with me that's really messed up? And being like, no, dude, like I've dealt with that too, but we don't share those things. It's not publicly acceptable. So that was really what inspired me, is like, okay, these people that I'm speaking to are connecting to my story. And even the weirdest parts, for probably shouldn't have used that word, but I'm talking about myself, obviously. And by weird, I just mean different, things that you wouldn't expect anyone else to have gone through, and they're connecting to that. And the reason they're connecting to it is because they've never heard anyone tell them before that, hey, guess what? That's okay to experience. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It doesn't mean something's permanently wrong with you. It is fixable. You can work through it. That's what encouraged me to write the book.
That's amazing. And where can people find this book if they're interested?
Easiest place is Amazon.com. Just search Evan Transue, or, Evan Transue is going to be easiest, but you could also search Overcoming Mental Health Challenges, How I Resolved 13 Years of Mental Health Issues Naturally. I'm just going to be very honest about this. As of about 2 days ago, I started releasing the PDF for free. So I can't send a physical copy. I'd lose money off that. I can't do that. But because of everything that's going on with the coronavirus, I let the PDF out completely for free. You can actually download it on your phone. You can download the free Kindle app. You can send the PDF to the Kindle app, and it will literally look like a real ebook. So that's pretty cool. I'm doing this as like an integrity thing, right? Like just hoping that people have the kind of right mindset with this. If you're someone out there that can afford this, it doesn't affect you at all, it's no problem. Yes, it was not free for me to write the book. It was not free for me to make the book. I'd appreciate it if you showed some support and purchased it. But if you're someone out there right now that you literally are on the brink of being broke, or maybe you're a younger person, maybe you're only 14, 15, and you don't want to use like mom and dad's credit card to buy the book. I get it. The PDF is out there. Go to Evan Transue on Facebook. Go to Evan Transue on Instagram. If you can't find it, shoot me a message. I'll send you the PDF, but it should be right on the newsfeed there. And it's probably going to be in the Instagram as the link for quite a bit. So I'll try to leave that up. But the PDF's available for free right now. So I'm doing that completely honor system, hoping that people do the right thing if they can afford it. But it's out there for free, so I'm not going to not mention that.
That's awesome, dude. And I know that a lot of people will appreciate that. And that's definitely talking about integrity. You're talking about Health Coach Ev. And with that, how does the book correlate with the podcast that you did, that you've started? And by the way, where can they find that, just in case? I'll put it all in the bio below. But
thank you. Yeah. So Overcoming Mental Health Challenges podcast is that was inspired based on like kind of the same thing. It was really, I just realized how much power the stories can have. And like I said, it's not just Evan Transue's story. So I was like, I wonder what someone else's story could do. And so then I just started talking to friends, and now it's kind of escalated where I'm getting people that I've never even met, which I think is the coolest thing ever. And I'm interviewing them and just having them share their story. That's all it is. They may have never shared their mental health story before. They might never share it again, but I interview people. I might also do some other random episodes, but primarily it's interviews of people who have real stories and real resolutions with mental health issues. Resolutions just means that they feel like they've gotten to a point where they're living a pretty good life, and they think that they have some information and tips to share with other individuals. So I have people come on and we do that. It's just OMHC podcast or Overcoming Mental Health Challenges. You could search that on any major podcast platform. Apple Podcasts, go right on there and it'll show right up. So I've had a lot of fun with that, and we're going to keep grinding it out.
Dude, I love it. So there you have it, folks. And we'll have Health Coach Ev back here again at some point to talk a little bit more, I'd say, deeply on a variety of different topics. But this was the introduction to him, and he's definitely someone that I think has a lot to offer people in clearly a variety of different ways. Definitely has had a massive impact on my life, especially everything with the light, organizing some of the Pillars of Growth retreats that we've had in the last couple of years, and super grateful for you. I'm definitely going to put all of your information in the link below because I think it's super practical that people follow you and pay attention to some of the stuff, especially if they've gone through any of the things that you've mentioned today. So I'll make sure to do that. But as far as where you're headed from here, I mean, regardless of the COVID stuff, obviously that's kind of put a thorn in your side as far as doing some of the minding your mind stuff that you had coming up. But where do you see Health Coach Ev and the brand and things that you're doing moving forward in the next couple of years?
Right. So my biggest goal right now is to build my name as much as possible, not to make it the Evan Transue show, but to build authority in the space and to let people know I'm serious about this. I'm dedicated to this. I have unique things to share. And with that money and influence that's generated from that, I want to start a retreat center up in the Catskill Mountains. As you know, Graham, you love it up there. We all do. It's a special place, man. You don't really have to be a spiritual person to go up there and feel that there is something different about that land. I don't know how to describe it. I don't mean to sound too weird if you're listening to this and you're not into that at all. There's something special about that place. And I want to start a retreat center there because I think I'm not trying to scare anyone, but I think the health stuff is going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And I want a place that people can come to from all around the world and just get away and not have to deal with that stuff. It's going to be all sourced local organic food, natural lighting, just everything that we're supposed to be doing. We're going to have different practitioners working there. And it's just going to be a place that you can just get away. Hopefully no cell phone service unless they throw 5G in there at the time. Then I'm going to have to block that out. But trust me, I will. But otherwise, off the grid type of stuff, man. Just real living as a human being, enjoying each other, community, going on hikes, having fun. That's the thing that excites me most right now, and I'm trying to get into that as fast as possible.
Right on, dude. And I know that I'm excited and await that day. Retreats that we've been on together have been a freaking blast, and I'm sure you're talking about real food. I mean, it really doesn't get much better than that, let's be honest. You can tell that it's real, and you can tell the Catskills are definitely for real. And you can tell the Health Coach Ev is for real. So with that said, the last question that I have that I think is super important to ask everybody is that when you look back on your deathbed, so when you're on your deathbed and you look back at your life, what is like the image or the vision or the moment or the reel of your life where it's like this image, this vision, this movie scene accurately depicts why my life was worth it? Like what value I added, if you will.
Right. The main thing that I care about, because I think about that quite often, is I want to be able to look back on my life and say, you know what? That was a guy who gave it his all and put in honest effort. So that doesn't mean I had to be the best at anything. Doesn't mean I had to do, any particular thing. It just means that I actually tried, right? And I saw things going on, sorry about that, in the world. And I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to do my best and do my part without burning myself out. I'm not talking workaholism. I'm just saying, hey, I tried. So I think there's a lot going on right now. I can only do my little piece. And then you just try to have faith, like people like you and other people that we know are doing their own little piece. And that could be so many different things, from helping the environment, efficient energy, right? You know what I mean? Like it could be a million different things. So that's the main thing I care about, is just being able to say, you actually gave it a legitimate try.
I love that, man. And dude, I really appreciate you coming on here. I appreciate all the effort and the hard work you're doing. And I know that, at 24, you have a lot to go and a lot of amazing things to add. And I'm looking forward to being a part of that adventure and a part of that journey and seeing this stuff happen in real time. And it's super cool. I was just sitting there reflecting, thinking like, wow, that's going to be really great when you have buddies that like have awesome retreat centers that you can just fucking go to or pay to be a part of or whatever it is, right? Because that's like obviously getting back to the old ways are going to be the epic clash of our generation and of our time. We are aware of this. Any millennial feels it. Everyone knows it. So it's coming some way. And to know that that's there and to be a part of that community and to share in this time and space and through this podcast is really special, dude. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. It's always cool sharing the message with people and just letting people know some truth about mental health and hopefully some other stuff, because we touched on a bunch of things. So
we'll dive into more too on the next one. But before you go, real quick, for anyone that wants to follow you or find out more about what you're doing, where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, the best place is Facebook and Instagram. That's the main things I use right now. I did recently start a YouTube, so I'm trying to grow that. I appreciate subscribers if you can. everything is always just going to be at Evan Transue. So even if you're watching this a year from now and there's another social media platform out there that's huge, I always just keep it simple. It's going to be on that. Instagram, I'm particularly active. I'm always doing stories, posting usually a couple times a day, just trying to let people know what's going on. But again, Facebook too. So feel free to reach out to me on any of those. I try to answer anything that I can. I mean, it's not like I have 10,000, 20,000 followers yet. So I try to answer questions. If you hit me with a DM, I always do my best to respond. Definitely a comment I will get back to given enough time. So yeah, let's get connected, man. I always love being around like-minded people. I like knowing there's other people out there doing their thing, trying to help the world and trying to figure this stuff out that we're going through right now.
100%, dude. Thank you so much. I'm going to put all your information below. Ladies and gents, this is Legends Find a Way podcast, and this is Health Coach Evan Transue. We out here.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Adios, amigo.